The year is 2009. What's wrong with it? Football started to perpetually change. Until then, the defensive midfield role was dominated by certain kind of players. Roy Keane, Claude Makélélé, and Patrick Vieira to name a few. These players have some things in common. They were known for their tough tackling, no-nonsense approach, primarily serving as an extra layer of defense. However, football has evolved, and so has this role, and Sergio Busquets has been at the forefront of this transformation. He may not be the name that you'd often associate with the headlines or the press, but he's a silent conductor. At what he does, he's a master, an artist. If you're curious enough, you'll ask, what exactly does he do? And how good was he really? This is the rise and the fall of the greatest defensive midfielder of our time. Hello everyone, really hope you're all doing well. Today's video is one I've been so eager to make for quite a while now. A couple of things to note. First, Busquets is my favorite midfielder, so I run the risk of going a little bit over the top, but I'll strive to remain unbiased. And secondly, this video is timestamped, so feel free to jump to any section you like, but if you asked me, I'd suggest watching it all. Come on, just do it. The relevance of players like Busquets in the game started in the late 1980s, following the retirement of Johan Cruyff after his illustrious career. Emphasis on the word illustrious because it might even be an understatement, because 9 Eredivisie titles, 1 La Liga, 3 European Cups, a World Cup Golden Ball, and perhaps most importantly, 3 Ballon d'Ors to his name is simply staggering. As expected, Cruyff transitioned into management with Ajax shortly after his playing career ended. He was just as successful a manager as a player. In fact, it was as a manager that he exerted his far-reaching influence on the game. The total football, a philosophy that was first introduced by his former manager Rinus Michels, involving players constantly rotating relative to their teammates' positions, was his core philosophy. Cruyff's version of this system, an almost mathematical approach focusing on distances and angles, required highly technical players, especially in the number 6 role, which he referred to as the pivote, or simply the pivot, the hinge upon which the entire system relied. He then later moved to Barcelona, where there was a system for screening players they thought would not reach the required standards. This was significant, particularly for none other than Pep Guardiola. He was almost released by the club because he didn't reach the required physical standards. What they didn't know was that this Guardiola who, and I quote, couldn't defend and was ineffective in the air, had the ingredients of a Johan Cruyff's pivot. He had, in Cruyff's own words, game intelligence, speed in his execution and technique. He promoted Guardiola into the first team and put him at the heart of the team, which would become extremely successful. 4 consecutive La Liga titles won, as many as the club had managed in the 3 preceding decades. And of course, the crowning jewel of Cruyff's career and legacy at Barcelona is the club's first ever European trophy won by his dream team in 1992. These ideas the club adopted and are ingrained in its identity, so much so that they are implemented at all levels of the youth system. Before we turn this into a Johan Cruyff video, let's get into the nitty-gritty. 2008. With the club struggling, Cruyff, who then held the role of an advisor at the club, advocated for the appointment of his inexperienced apprentice, Pep Guardiola, as the first team manager at the expense of a serial winner in Jose Mourinho. This was the second advent of Cruyff's positional play at Barcelona. Guardiola inherited a star-studded yet massively underachieving squad that included Ronaldinho, Messi, Eto'o, Puyol, Xavi and Iniesta. That team, believe it or not, had gone trophyless the previous season. In the end, it was fitting that Guardiola's heir would be found by himself. Following his mentor's example, Guardiola promoted a tall, slim and relatively unknown Sergio Busquets to the first team. It would be with this team if you had to learn never to judge by first impression. They lost their first game to a promoted side, but I don't think anyone was prepared for what would follow. Pep eventually got his ideas through, and the rest is history. They won the league double and were a menace not only to the Spanish football, but to the whole of Europe. Speaking of which, the trophy that completed the club's first ever continental treble was the Champions League, and surprise surprise, at the heart of the midfield that night was none other than Sergio Busquets. They conquered Sir Alex Ferguson's Manchester United in Rome to put their stamp of dominance on continental football. And before you ask, no, it didn't end there. 3 more silverwares followed to make it 6 out of 6 in a calendar year. Their sextuple was unprecedented in the history of football, but great as it was, it would be criminal if we, or anyone else, reduced their success to just the trophies, because it's not just what they won, but how they won what they won. They play some of the most attractive football on the planet at the time, and their brand The possession-based tiki-taka still is the golden standard, and our man, Sergio Busquets, was their possession hub. Messi, Xavi and Iniesta deservedly got the plaudits for their brilliance. The consequence of that, however, is that Busquets was often left as the unsung hero. He was a crucial component in what was, and it's hard to argue this one, the best club side ever. They were unplayable, they were a force. Unsurprisingly, this dominance extended to international football with Spain. With a similar style of play and the same personnel, Busquets and his partners in crime, Xavi and Iniesta in midfield, Spain were victorious in the 2010 World Cup and the European Championships 2 years later, the latter in which Busquets was named in the team of the tournament. Why is all this so significant, you may ask? Chiefly because without Busquets, Barcelona and Spain could never have achieved what they have achieved. Xavi Hernandez. Quite a strong statement from a participant of the success. For a decade or so, Busquets was an integral part of two of the most dominant sides this century, one with Barcelona and the other with Spain. What is it that made him so special, you may wonder? And this is where the illusion of what we see comes into play. At first glance, it seems like he does very little, but with a closer observation, you see an artist at work. But rather than take my word for it, consider the words of those who played the game. We are all fascinated by the thrills and frills and the fantasy and flicks and touches, but it's the simplicity of Busquets that makes them tick, that gets them out of tight situations in their own third and the middle of the pitch, that sets up attacks. He's a platform. Rio Ferdinand. Busquets' biggest and perhaps most important attribute is his press resistance. No matter the situation, he never panics, always calm, composed and collected under pressure. Sometimes you wonder if this brother has ice running through his veins. He made the possession-based game model almost effortless. He was the platform. The whole system was hinged on him. And as good as he was at that, it wouldn't be enough to make him one of the greatest defensive midfielders. After all, defense is in his job description. He would still need to make a defensive contribution, right? That's right. But he does it his way, subtly. Without the ball, he gives us a lesson, that of being in the right place to intercept and running just to recover the ball. Johan Cruyff. His positional awareness and timing are as elite as they can be. Out of possession, he always seemed to be in the right position at the right time to easily nick it away from the opponents, or preemptively blocked passing lanes to prevent things from happening, thus minimizing the need for him to make rash tackle. When he needed to, however, he didn't hesitate. Other than that, his decision making, execution and technique are out of this world. Some of the things he does defy statistical measures. For a decade and a half, Busquets remained a constant in that midfield, delivering consistently regardless of who was his partner. He was so good that if we had to discuss all his good contributions to the game, this video would last hours if not days. But we don't want to do that. His fall from grace was rather rapid. As the club traversed challenge after challenge and crisis after crisis, the reality of an end loomed large. Unfortunately for us, Busquets never lost his timing acumen. Matter of fact, he decided in 2023 to call it a day at the top level and continue somewhere else. America was his chosen destination. But we've been lucky. We've been lucky to have had 15 years of consistent top-level performances out of him. The same period during which he has set the standard for both La Masia and the global football community, effectively redefining the defensive midfield role. Everything's so easy for him. One touch, two touch. When you coach young players in midfield now, what's the point of having 5 or 6 touches when you can have 1 or 2 and move the ball swiftly? These are the words of Frank Lampard. In other words, why coach young players to be anyone else other than Busquets? To ponder, is Busquets the greatest defensive midfielder of all time? And there we have it, a more or less comprehensive evolution of the pivot and the player who perfected it. I hope you enjoyed this one as much as I enjoyed putting it together. Go ahead and tell me what you guys think of him in the comment section. Is he the greatest defensive midfielder of all times? Tell me in the comment section. That's it from me today. Be safe, enjoy, and I'll definitely catch you in the next one. Peace.